Hi, I'm Gemma Lauren Krebs, author of the Locked series. Today I'm reading Chapter 2 to you of my first book, Nothing Lost. If you're interested in it, you can go purchase a copy for yourself on Amazon.com. Or you can just listen to me read it for you because there isn't currently an audiobook version. So I thought I'd upload some free videos for you guys because I've wanted to read it, just haven't had time to actually record the audiobook version. So here's at least a bit of a taste. We'll see how long I go on with it. But right now, all of us need some good stories in our lives. Anyway, I'm currently working on book 2, Magic Itself, if you want more news on that. It's coming along, but there's a lot of work that goes into making a book. But you can follow me at Gemma Lauren Krebs on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and at the Locked series on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. So sit back and relax. Hope you enjoyed Chapter 1, and now here's Chapter 2 of Nothing Lost. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Severed straw heads littered the training ground. Dareth, the weapon master, was supposed to be teaching us a new sword strike, but he hadn't shown up. He often left us to train the royal guard. Only allowed to enter the garden every 2 weeks, I'd had to go back to my regular daily routine. My best friend, Jevin, wasn't even here to train with me today. I sighed, set myself again in front of my straw dummy, and struck my sword stance before darting forward, dealing a swift stab to where the dummy's heart would be. Then I turned to the side to avoid any further attack. I stopped. This just wasn't interesting. I looked over to where some of the boys had gathered and were sitting, talking to each other instead of practicing. One thing I knew, if I practiced, at least I would be more prepared if someone did come to kill the tree again. Huffing at the boys just lazing around, I turned back to my dummy, its straw face staring blankly. After 3 more successful strikes, the last one felling the dummy's head, I was near finishing for the day. Hearing high gasps from the side, I looked over. A few girls seemed to be on break from their lessons and were watching us practice over the barrier. Among them was Princess Nirin, the little sister of Crown Prince Fedrid. A small hand covered her mouth as she whispered to the girl next to her. I looked over to Fedrid and saw that he'd grudgingly gotten up from sitting around with the other boys. Fedrid, 2 years older than me, was hard to get along with. When I beat him for the first time in foot racing, he'd stepped on my foot afterwards. There'd been no repercussions for him. He was the crown prince. One of the servant boys running around had brought a new dummy to replace the one I'd defeated. I nodded my thanks. I felt a sharp nudge as Fedrid drew up beside me, sword in hand. "I'll take over from here," he said. I'd been wanting to leave soon, but somehow Fedrid always rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't want to let him win today. "There are other dummies, Crown Prince. Use one of them if you will." He turned to me, his blue eyes flashing. "You dare talk back to your Crown Prince?" I did dare. He wasn't being fair, and as the apprentice gardener, I had nearly as much say in palace rules as him. I found myself itching for something more challenging than beheading a straw figure. "Shall we spar for it then? The one who wins can stay here." He looked back toward the dummy. "There's no need to fight you. I'd win. Listen to your crown prince." I saw tension lining his body. Anger swelled within me. "Are you afraid I'll bruise your cheek like last time? I promise I'll be more careful. I know you don't get around to practicing much." I got such satisfaction as he reeled around, his mouth twitching downward. His free fist rose, and his nose nearly touched mine as he leaned forward, sneering. "I'm better than you'll ever be, apprentice gardener. Go water the plants and stay where you're meant to be." He laughed. I found that laugh far too infuriating. He turned away, but I dropped my sword, reached out and grabbed his shoulder, and before I knew it, Fedrid had let out a squeal of pain as I knocked that laugh from his face. The girls on the sidelines squeaked in horror. "How dare you!" Fedrid clutched at his cheek, tears streaming from his eyes. Before he could finish or I could reply he deserved it, my throat was cinched by my tunic's collar. "You little... If there's one thing not to do here, it's harm your future king." Dareth's breath was hot in my ear. "Where's your father?" Not 15 minutes later, Dareth had nearly thrown me at the queen. Her manicured hand gripped my shoulder tightly as she escorted me down the tunnel to the garden. At the gate, she yelled, "Master Gardener, please make your way here." A few minutes later, she'd explained what I'd done. My father had apologized profusely, and I was left standing alone with him in the near darkness. "Shaylight," he said, after nearly 3 minutes of silence. "Though you haven't taken the vow of nonviolence yet, you should know better." "Yes, Father." I felt my face scrunch in anger. "I don't think you understand." My father's voice had turned to a deadly whisper, and I timidly raised my face to him. "If you act like this, you cannot be a gardener. Our role is to protect, and you clearly have no regard for that." "I'm to protect the tree, Father. Fedrid insulted me, so I hit him. What's wrong with defending myself?" "The tree protects everyone. You need to respect that. Clearly I've failed in your lessons if you can't even comprehend that much." "Father, No." He sounded angry, almost yelling the word at me. My father was not one to show emotion, ever. His voice scared me. "How dare you? Your mother died giving birth to you, and this is how you live your life? You need to be living in a way she would find honorable. Here, as you are now, acting on every selfish whim. Better that she had lived and you died." I'd been about to plead my case, but the words disappeared as a void opened within me. I had always known that my father didn't like me very much, that I was at least partially to blame, most definitely in his eyes, for the death of my mother. Never, though, had he said it out loud to me. I thought I must have physically shrunk. It might have been better if he'd struck me. My eyes burned with unshed tears. I'd always tried to be as much like my father as possible, and as little like how I thought my mother might have been, so I wouldn't remind him of her. I saw now that I was failing in that. "I'm sorry, Father." The words were barely words. Only shame spilled from my mouth. "I won't do it again." "Of course you won't," said my father, already turning back to the garden. "If you did, you'd be nothing to me." I clutched at myself as he left me alone in the darkness. This had happened because I'd let myself be weak. I'd struck when Fedrid had only taunted me. My father was strong. He never acted on his emotions. He did his job and little else, protecting our land. I had to be like him. I had to stop myself and think about what I was doing. Thoughtless emotions would drive my father from me. He was all I had. Rushing down the hall back to my room, trying not to let any tears fall, I nearly bowled over Princess Niren. "Apprentice Gardener," she nodded her greeting to me. "Are you all right? My brother—" "Forgive me, Princess. I'm fine," I said, avoiding looking at her and hoping she wouldn't see the tears about to fall. I gazed at the stone walls surrounding us and willed my tears back into my eyes. My brother seems to have acted inappropriately. You cannot pay heed to him. I acted inappropriately, Princess. I looked at her, trying to speak normally. Her face was filled with anger. You are the better man than him. I'm sure he must have said something terrible to you. I would not have wanted to stand for it. Thank you, Princess. I was hardly hearing her, still thinking of what my father had said. The echo of footsteps came down the hallway, and Jevin joined in our conversation, smiling and bowing to the princess. Your Highness? Jevin, she said, nodding back. I must borrow Ch.2 from you, if you would be so kind. The princess looked hesitant, but finally nodded. Of course. Then she bowed and left us. I started walking again, wanting to get back to my room, and Jevin came along. I heard you hit the prince. Everything all right? His light voice came from my side, but I didn't look at him. I lost my temper. Well, we know he's never liked you much. I'm sure you had a good reason. I shook my head. Thinking back, it hadn't even been a good reason. It doesn't matter. My father got angry at me because I used violence. We're not allowed to as gardeners. Ah, sorry. We had reached my door. Jevin shuffled his feet. He was a year older than me, but I was still a little taller than him. He smiled slyly. Next time call me over and I'll use violence for you. Jevin could always cheer me up, and I relented slightly, thanking him before entering my room. That night, I promised myself I'd do everything I could to be the best master gardener. I'd never give my father another reason to hate me. I knew I could do better. So that's chapter 2 of Nothing Lost. You can check the full book out on Amazon.com, but I'll try to upload some more chapters for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a great day or night, whatever time it is for you, and I hope you're doing well. Bye.